The House Judiciary Committee will come to order. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Chair Leitner. Representatives Begol.
Here.
Wozniak.
Here.
Harris. DeBoyer.
Here.
Johnson. Here. Schutte.
Here.
Carter. Hope.
Here.
Breen.
Present.
Scott.
Present.
Mr. Chair, you have 8 members present. You do have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. Today we're going to have an informational presentation from the Michigan Sheriff's Association. Joining us from the Sheriff's Association is the Executive Director, Matt Saxton, his Deputy Director, Dan Fanis, and we have Sheriff Poulian and Sheriff Goodenough here. So, gentlemen, if you want to make your way up and begin when you're ready.
Good morning, Chair Begol and committee members. Thank you for taking the time to listen to our presentation this morning on the Michigan Sheriff's Association and the duties of sheriff. Let me briefly reintroduce myself. I am Matt Saxton, Executive Director of the Michigan Sheriff's Association and retired Sheriff of Calhoun County. I've been in law enforcement and public safety for the better part of 32 years, and then continue in this position as Executive Director to oversee improvements to this profession that I've been honored to serve for 32 plus years. And with me today, I'll let the other 3 individuals introduce themselves briefly.
Good morning, committee members. My name is Dan Fanis, just by way of brief history. 43 years in law enforcement. I had the pleasure of doing my first 25 years in the city of Westland, where I retired on a Friday as its chief of police to become on Monday the undersheriff for Wayne County, where I got to serve under 3 consecutive sheriffs. 15 years later, I retired from that position to accept the deputy director's position with the Michigan Sheriff's Association. And now, as life travels by in light speed, I'm coming up on my 4th year there. It's an exciting time, and I'm pleased to be in front of you guys to share a little bit of information about what we do. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Michael Poulin. I'm the sheriff in Muskegon County. I'm currently in my 3rd term as sheriff in Muskegon County. I've been serving there. I'm in my 38th year right now as a law enforcement officer working for that community. I currently sit on the Governor's Traffic Safety Advisory Commission also in my 3rd term, and currently serve as the Michigan Sheriff's Association president.
Good morning, members. I'm Troy Goodenough. I'm the sheriff of Monroe County. I'm in my 2nd term as sheriff, and I've been there over 3 decades serving the citizens of Monroe County. And I was just recently appointed to the Governor's Mental Health Diversion Council. So I'm honored to be here today to share some insight of jail operations and sheriff's office operations. So thank you.
So the Michigan Sheriff's Association was established in 1877. Michigan Sheriffs is one of the oldest law enforcement organizations representing in the nation, representing Michigan's 83 elected sheriffs. MSA is committed to maintaining and enhancing the office of sheriff through professional development, legislative advocacy, and public education. Collectively, the Michigan sheriffs employ approximately 10,000 public safety professionals across their many services that they provide through police services, jails, dispatch centers, court building security, and civil process, animal control, to name just a few of the obligations of the Office of Sheriff. MSA provides specialized training programs, hosts professional development conferences, and offers legal, technical, and legislative support to ensure the sheriffs and their staffs are well equipped to meet today's complex public safety challenges. From Marine and ORV patrol academies to leadership institutes for new sheriffs, MSA fosters excellence and accountability. MSA also advocates for public policies that support law enforcement effectiveness, including improvements to how we deliver our services, jail reimbursement, retiree reemployment, flexibility, mental health response strategies. With nearly 150 years of service, MSA remains a trusted voice and resource for the Office of Sheriff in Michigan. All this is done with a small staff. MSA is a 501c3. We get no public funding of the association. Listed there on the screen are our small number of staff that provide everything you're going to hear about for the sheriffs here in the state of Michigan. And that is our direct office number and website for contact. As a 501c3, we are overseen by a board of all elected sheriffs in the state of Michigan. We have 5 districts spread out across the state of Michigan, and there is representation from each of those 5 districts on the MSA Board of Directors. And as you can see from the screen and their introduction, 2 of my bosses are sitting to my right and my left today. Sheriff Poulin is currently the president of the association, and Sheriff Goodenough is the secretary-treasurer, and will soon be president. We rotate the president's chair every year, and the president serves for a year. So the remaining board members are past President Sheriff Fuller, Vice President Sheriff Scott Stevenson of Elkona County, District 3 Rep Sheriff Craig Mass of Oceana County, District 4 Rep Sheriff Steve Hinckley of Calhoun County, and District 1 Rep is Sheriff Greg Zybert of Marquette County. We also have a representative of each new sheriff class, and they serve in that position for 4 years. This year at the past New Sheriffs Institute, Ottawa County Sheriff Eric DeBoer was elected to represent those new sheriffs for the next 4 years on the MSA Board of Directors. And as many of you know, we are represented very well here in Lansing with Ben Bakken, who is sitting somewhere behind. And I don't know, he didn't pay me to say that, we pay him, so I don't know how that works, but we are represented very well by Ben Bakken and Capital Service. Just a couple of the programs that we provide for the sheriffs in the communities they serve. First off, we have a $1,000 scholarship that goes out to graduating seniors, 1 in each of the 5 districts, for graduating seniors that have been accepted in a Michigan school and are attending 4 criminal justice programs. And then we have our Victim Services Unit, which is made up wholly of volunteers, and they respond to incidents throughout their communities to assist victims in their greatest time of need. They are not always victims of crime, but if it's a surviving family member of a suicide, a car accident, a house fire, we have over 600 volunteer advocates spread across the state, made up within the 57 units that we have. 53 counties have a victim advocate program, and 3 cities have one as well. And those cities are Lansing, Grand Rapids, and Holland, and then the other 4 units are in sheriff's offices across the state. All that is done on a small grant that we get from the state of Michigan through DHHS. We get $85,000 annually to help put on training for those volunteers, and we host a annual conference, which coincidentally is this Friday and Saturday here in Lansing. We have over 340 attendees registered, but when I became sheriff, that was one of the programs that I first started to see those great things that those volunteers do for your community is huge. And to do that for little to no money is great. So we appreciate the grant we get from DHHS for that programming and to have those volunteers within our counties. The other two programs I did want to mention today is our mission program, which is essentially an internal affairs for sheriffs. If a sheriff has an incident with an employee that they feel they can't handle internally, they will call our office. We have a stable of trained investigators that we pair two investigators together, and they will go do that investigation for the sheriff. We typically try and get investigators that are at least one county removed from the requesting county. That way, most likely, the investigators don't know the individuals that they have to do the investigations on. We typically will have call-outs for the need for that about 30 times a year throughout the state. And then our last program is a program I am thankful that we have, but it is a program that I wish we didn't ever have to use. It's our SMART program. It's Sheriff's and Municipal Memorial Assistance Response Team. And this was started 15 plus years ago within the Sheriff's Association. We sheriffs do know how to spell, but about 7, 8 years ago, we added the Michigan Association of Chiefs of Police to the SMART program, so we had to add an extra M there to solidify their membership in that. Unfortunately, last year we had 2 full call-outs to assist in the line of duty deaths, one with, and I apologize, one of the 2 full call-outs were Hillsdale County Deputy Butler, who was tragically murdered in the line of duty. Our team was called out, and we spent 6 days down in Hillsdale County assisting them putting the funeral and funeral law enforcement honors together for Deputy Butler and his surviving family. And we do that at no charge to the county or the family. We go in and assist those families in their greatest time of need. The other was Melvindale Officer Saeed, who we also went in and assisted Melvindale for 5 days to plan the law enforcement honors funeral for Officer Saeed as well. And I mentioned another call-out was a partial call-out to assist Oakland County. Sometimes we're not needed for those larger agencies, but Deputy Reckland was also murdered in the line of duty this past year. Michigan lost 5 law enforcement officers in the line of duty this past year. The other 2 are MSP employees, and they did not request assistance with their honoring of their fallen individuals, but the names of each one of those individuals will be engraved on the law enforcement memorial here in Michigan, but also on Police Week. Those names will go up on the law enforcement memorial in Washington, D.C., and join 21,000 other law enforcement personnel that have been killed in the line of duty. So we're thankful for that team. It's one unit that I wish we never had to use, but it is there, and it offers great assistance to family and those agencies we serve. And next, just a list of the multiple trainings that we put on each year. One thing I would like to highlight, we are thankful of the legislature for providing the continued professional education credits through MCOLs. This year that's funded at $1,000 per law enforcement professional. And now that that is in place, MSA tries to make sure that our summer and fall professional development meets the needs of those CPEs, either the required or agency choice. And we get all our trainings approved through MCOS so that our sheriffs, undersheriffs, and other personnel in the sheriff's office can receive their PPEs at the same time they're attending our summer conference. And then every 4 years with election cycle, we put on a new Sheriff's Institute, and we just hosted our new undersheriff and jail administrator training here in Ingham County this past March. We had 27 new sheriffs elected out of the 83 this past year, and they all attended in December our new sheriff school. We also provide Marine Patrol Academy, ORV Patrol Academy. We do a week-long training for those mission investigators, and we typically run one of those trainings every other year. And then our honor grad training is part. That class is put on up in Alpena. It's only has openings for 56 individuals. This past March when we March when we opened registration, our system crashed because there were so many people on there trying to get a spot. It's a highly sought after training, and that does help us with the cost of assisting in those funerals when our SMART team is called out. And then, as I mentioned, our victim services at conference and new advocate trainings. Just briefly, I mentioned MSA as a 501c3. We do receive memberships from our member sheriffs. We have always, since I've been involved with MSA, had 100% membership of our 83 sheriffs, and we continue to have 100% membership. The dues of the sheriff would no way cover the cost of operating the association. We bring in less than $100,000 from the sheriff's dues of a budget of about $1.3 million. Their dues also covers their dues for the National Sheriff's Association as well, so Michigan is 100% membership of the National Sheriff's Association. And then I would highlight that we have over 20,000 citizen and business members of MSA, and if any of you want to become a member of MSA, please visit our website, and we'd be happy to include you in that 20,000 citizens. So MSA officially represents the office of sheriff. Everything we do is to support the collective interest of and operations of Michigan's 83 elected sheriffs. And these are just some of the things, and I've briefly went over some of those in previous slides, and both sheriffs will touch on some of those highlights as well. Michigan's Office of Sheriff was created in the state's constitution, and there shall be elected a 4-year term in each organized county a sheriff. And I would remind our legislators that the office of sheriff, the sheriff themselves, is the only elected law enforcement officer in the state of Michigan. The prosecutors will say that they're the chief law enforcement official of the county, but the sheriff is the chief law enforcement officer of the county. And then just a list of some of the core responsibilities of the sheriffs before I turn it over to Sheriff Poulin and Sheriff Goodenough, but provide law enforcement services in unincorporated areas of the county, jail administration, court services, court security, civil process, prisoner transport, emergency disaster response, community outreach, school programs, animal control, dispatch, just to name a few. And as I was preparing this slide, Michigan is such a vast state, and some of our counties are smaller, some are large. Kent County and Oakland County are two of the top 5 largest law enforcement agencies in the state of Michigan, next to Detroit PD and MSP. But in some counties, that same deputy may take that 911 call, may do the investigation, may be security during the court process, and possibly could even transport that individual to DOC if convicted. So just I mean, we have counties, Keweenaw County has 6 personnel. It has one of the most beautiful sheriff's office in the state of Michigan if you ever get up to Keweenaw, but I like your place too, Sheriff, so. But, and as I say that, I'll turn the mic over to you if you want to turn on your.
Again, thank you for the opportunity to be here today. Kind of touching a little bit on what Matt had to say there. Yeah, I'm one of 83 sheriffs elected to serve as a chief law enforcement officer in their counties. Our duties have been constitutionally delegated and are defined by state law. In all, there are over 300 separate statutes that empower, restrict, provide for the replacement, or otherwise direct the sheriff of each county. Though many people believe our primary responsibilities are maintaining a jail or answering calls of service in order to enforce criminal laws of our state, I believe we all can agree that the office of sheriff is much more than that. The duties of sheriff are immense: searching out criminal law violators, traffic violations, investigating crashes, recovering drowning victims, service of all court processes, and many other duties not specifically listed in statute. Additional duties for the sheriff include patrolling lakes and rivers, enforcement of snowmobile and ORV trails, to include educational programs, community correction programs, mental health programs, social services, emergency services, and others too numerous to mention. No other law enforcement agency has the common law duties, statutory requirements, or constitutional requirements that are imposed upon a sheriff. The sheriff's duties encompass all aspects of law enforcement, corrections, and the court process. These far-reaching duties ensure that the organizational structure and operations of the sheriff's office are complex and diverse. As a Michigan sheriff, I'm grateful for the opportunity to serve my community, with a commitment to utilize my office as an opportunity to unite and engage all stakeholders. As sheriffs, we must balance personal values and beliefs when it comes to problem-solving our community's issues. This can be done when the communities we serve believe us to be effective and when our officers and agencies operate at the highest standards of professional conduct. There's no other law enforcement entity or law enforcement position that is more trusted, more embedded, or has built a relationship with the community than that of the office of sheriff. Today is an opportunity to discuss and engage. Over the past few years, every sheriff in Michigan has experienced new challenges, from continued education, budgets, retention of staff, and mental health issues related to both our community and those who serve. As an elected official, we must work collaboratively, engaging in every opportunity to succeed. For our law enforcement operations, we have found great success in the Michigan Commission on Law Enforcement Standards Public Safety Academy Assistance Program. This tuition reimbursement program allows each Michigan sheriff to enhance recruitment strategies and operational efficiencies, both of which bolster public safety and assist in alleviating training expenses, allowing for the allocation of resources to other critical areas. A few of those critical areas are school safety, mental health, and for some sheriffs like me, marine safety. Our association will always request ongoing funding for school mental health and school safety grants. Programs like these embody community policing by building relationships, promoting safety, and engaging with students daily, fostering trust and collaboration between law enforcement and the next generation. In Muskegon County alone, we have found great success in utilizing our crisis intervention teams by ensuring specialized training for every deputy sheriff through a 20-hour behavioral health and partnership training and a 40-hour crisis intervention team training. This, accompanied with a county-wide 100% school participation, affords us with the needed tools to effectively support programs like Handle with Care, where law enforcement is able to alert a child's school when a child has been exposed to a traumatic event. On behalf of the Michigan Sheriff's Association, I'd like to extend my heartfelt thanks to you for your support. With a collaborative dedication to justice, fairness, and the rule of law, your efforts have and will make a meaningful impact. Your leadership and commitment reflect the values that strengthen our democracy and uphold the rights of all citizens. Please know that your work does not go unnoticed and is deeply valued by those of us who are affected. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheriff Poulin. Sheriff Goodenough?
Thank you. Some of the comments that I may convey as nexus is to what Sheriff Poulin shared with you as well. A couple things I want to highlight first is our biggest challenge currently remains recruiting and retention. Don't get me wrong, and that's for all aspects of the Sheriff's Office. We're improving, but we're not at the pace necessary to maintain full staffing levels in both divisions. Our second challenge that we face, and I'm going to be correction-centric with this, are the inmates who remain incompetent to stand trial or waiting for forensic evaluations that are housed in our jail facilities that are not built to be mental health institutions, but we're tasked with this because we can't return them to society because they don't function properly. As the sheriff, it's our duty to write the narrative. We have to be the one to convey the message, and as Sheriff Poulin said, we've implemented a number of programs to show our value and our commitment to each of our respective communities of transparency and openness. I want to highlight a few things in the Corrections Division. The purpose of the correction facility is the safety and security of the incarcerated individuals as well as the staff that work there. And again, our facilities are aging, and we have to look at taking a different approach from incarceration to rehabilitation. That's what we need to do. We need to give these individuals that are incarcerated the tools necessary to be productive members of society. And I want to highlight a number of programs that you'll find across the state of Michigan and the different sheriff's offices, but the list I'm going to share with you is what we have in Monroe County, and that is MAT, a medication-assisted treatment program, Hope Healing and Recovery for females that are incarcerated, opioid education, peer support for inmates, Michigan Works, so that we can prepare those individuals incarcerated for employment when they get released, sex offender counseling, MRT, which is moral recognition therapy, GED. We have a very robust GED program. We partner with our local school district. We have 1 to 2 inmates a year that, when discharged from the jail, have their GED equivalent to get a job and be successful. Mental health services. We have a clinician and a peer support embedded right in our correctional facility 40 hours a week. And I'm proud to report that individuals suffering from serious mental health illness, we've had a 37% reduction in recidivism rate. You can look across the country at those stats. That's staggering to have that kind of success, because it's our commitment to give these individuals the necessary tools to be successful. We just don't release them out the door and say good luck. We have a discharge plan that includes a program to pay their fines, the continuity of care for mental health, housing, transportation, and the basic needs. We have an inmate garden. Last year we harvested over 4,000 pounds of vegetables that we donated to local food banks. We have a Serve Safe certification program that our inmates that are work in our kitchen secure. Pesticide program that we give our inmates this opportunity to be certified in pesticide application. They can walk out the door and get a job at one of our landscape facilities. In June, we'll launch our Family Services Unit in our Corrections Division. That's to create continuity between the inmates and their families and prepare them for re-engagement with their families. A lot of these folks get released. The inmates don't know how to deal with their families, and the families don't know how to deal with them. We're going to be, this is going to be a very robust program when launched. And the last thing I want to mention is programs is historically on Friday at 3 o'clock, a judge will give an inmate a bond and require a tether. The tether company leaves at 2 o'clock. So that inmate has to remain in our facility until Monday morning. And I said, exposes the institution to liability. It lengthens that opportunity for the inmate to engage with their family. So we took up the task of installing those tethers. We saved the County of Monroe over $10,000 last year alone by installing those tethers. And it's just not about the monetary value. It's getting these individuals back in the community to engage with their family members. You heard mention Director Saxton about victim services. We have to be the voice for the victims. Our decisions have to be victim-centric. As I close, I want to thank the council and the commission for the tuition reimbursement to cover expenses, as Sheriff Poulin said, sending individuals to the academy. And I'm truly looking forward to the Law Enforcement Trust Fund initiative to reduce violent crime. And in respect to school resource officers in Monroe County, we don't call them school resource officers. We call them school relationship officers, because that's what we want them to do. And thank goodness for the legislature that funded school resource funding. I have at least one officer in every school district. In 2 districts, I have 2, and in 1 district, I have 5, 1 in every building. So again, thank you for this opportunity to share our story with you, and thank you for everything you're doing for our community and our citizens.
Thank you, Sheriff Goodenough and Sheriff Poulin. That's just 2 stories from 2 sheriffs. We have 81 other sheriffs that are doing the same type programs across the state. And now we'll step into some of today's challenges, but also some legislative priorities that we have. But just a few. I mean, each sheriff mentioned those: the mental health issues, whether that's the mental health well-being of our staff and personnel, or the individuals in our community that we deal with on a daily basis, or those individuals in our county jails. The lack of dedicated bed space in the state of Michigan for individuals that are found incompetent to stand trial. It's at a critical state. We need to make sure we have beds for it's the biggest complaint I hear from my sheriffs on a daily basis. When are they going to get beds for individuals in our jails that have been found incompetent to stand trial and need treatment to either get them back to where they need to be, or the ability to have that court case move forward and have a finding for closure for everyone, the victims, the defendant, and the community. Aging jails, jail overcrowding, school safety, and yes, sheriffs do make mistakes. When I created this, I missed instead of changing criminal landscape, it should have said changing criminal justice landscape. So we do admit to our mistakes when we make mistakes as well. But sheriffs continually to work with local leaders, citizens, and yourself here in the legislature. I'll turn it over to Dan Fonisno.
Good morning again. The Michigan Sheriff's Association has a legislative committee. We get together, work in concert with our executive board to identify our legislative priorities for the year. There's 8 of them I'd like to run through with you. I won't go into any great length because A, you have them in front of you. B, we provided letters to all the leaderships from both caucuses to inform them about what was important to us. But there's 8 things we'd just like to touch on today. Starting with number 1, we've titled it Retiree Reemployment. Here's what I'd like to say to you. Oops, yep, that's up there. Here's what I'd like to say to you. Every one of us knows that the most important issue in law enforcement right now, or the biggest problem that we're having, is recruitment and retention. The legislature has been very, very helpful in the area of recruitment, and that you funded, as 2 other sheriffs have already brought up to you, our ability to seek tuition reimbursement to sponsor individuals through the academies. Retention, however, is a grave issue for us. Right now, we are seeking a legislative fix that would create a remedy for 13 counties that have an independent pension system that prevents an individual from retiring from that agency, coming back, returning to employment, and working more than 1,000 hours. Those same individuals that have that restriction at the employer that they've just worked long enough to retire from are now going to other agencies to work. Agencies are losing that institutional knowledge, institutional memory, et cetera. It's a tragedy when we lose those individuals. To put it in real quick context, coming from Wayne County has 350 vacancies plus right now. That relates to 1,000 hours of overtime a day. For every individual that separates from service and retires and goes someplace else, if we can't hire and replace, it just exacerbates that problem. We're looking to basically replicate something that MERS has done. MERS waived a rule for a period of 5 years that said you could come back and work more than 1,000 hours. This won't be a mandate. It just would provide those entities with an option to remove that 1,000-hour barrier so that individuals with that knowledge could retain employment there, or to continue on in a different capacity, but retain employment there. Moving on to number 2, this one is simply, we firmly believe that a sheriff or a person that's going to be elected to the office of sheriff should have some experience in law enforcement or corrections. We identified a 5-year period where they're, at some point in their life, they had a period of 5 years of MCO's licensure or 5 years of certification through the Michigan Sheriff's Coordinating and Training Council. If we just put this in simple perspective, at any agency that you have, you can't get promoted to sergeant until you've achieved X number of years of seniority there. It just seems if the person's gonna hold the highest office of law enforcement in that county, that there should be a requirement for them to have an understanding of the operations that they're going to take over.
Both of those priorities had bills sponsored by committee members last session, and we appreciate those efforts from last session.
We do, we just wish we'd gotten across the finish line at the end, but we're gonna strive for it again this year. The next one, item 3, has to do with full reimbursement from the Michigan Department of Corrections when they delay the receipt of an inmate that's been sentenced to their custody. During COVID, this is when this really first started to happen. We'd have inmates that were sentenced to the custody of the Michigan Department of Corrections. They wouldn't take them. And quite honestly, there was a question of whether it was even legal for that individual to stay in our jails. Put the legality aside. We got extra liability associated with them being there. There was extra risk if they were involved in something when they shouldn't have even been in our custody. We're seeking a reimbursement at a rate if the MDOC, for whatever reason, says, no, we're not gonna take that individual right now. We think we should be adequately compensated for holding an individual that shouldn't actually be in our custody. Item number 4 is the increase in reimbursement to county jails for housing Michigan Department of Correction parole violators. These are typically individuals that do not have any other charges or pending charge. They're an individual that's violated a condition of their parole. It may constitute a new crime, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they're being charged with that. This rate for reimbursement is $35 a day. It was established in 1988. I think we could all say that the cost of living has exponentially grown since that period of time. To put it in context again, in my Wayne County-centric brain, it cost us $165 a day to house an inmate, so the $35 a day reimbursement is woefully inadequate. Moving on to priority number 5, again, this is a reimbursement issue from the Michigan Department of Corrections. I'm sure you all know that there are certain individuals that are convicted of felony crimes that in theory should go to prison, but they don't. They remain in the county jail where they can remain for a period of up to 1 year. There's a formulation that's been crafted out based off of the risk, potential violence of these individuals. There's a higher reimbursement rate. We were very, very pleased that last session, the legislature was willing to recognize our plight, increased us by a little bit. We have these 3 tiers of $45, $60, and $70 a day. We're seeking an additional $5 to bring it up to $50, $65, yes, there's a typo on that slide. We do make mistakes. That one I own. And $75. Again, while we're seeking that increase, I think it's worth pointing out, for the most part, this doesn't even adequately reimburse a sheriff's office for what they're expending to house those individuals. The next one, pretty straightforward. Right now, Michigan law prevents the transportation of 2 individuals, an adult and a juvenile, that have both been arrested for committing the same crime. To put it in perspective, they drove there together, they walked there together, they committed the crime together, but when law enforcement gets there, if law enforcement was to effect an arrest, to bring them to jail or a juvenile detention facility, for example, legally, they're prohibited from having those individuals ride in the same car. If you're from an area that has a large police presence, maybe this isn't an issue. But as we've talked about, there's some sheriff's offices that only have 6 people working. That might be the only officer that's on duty. The conundrum is, if you can't transport them together, what do you do? We're seeking the means to transport them together. And to be very, very clear, we understand that once they're taken to a secure facility, they have to be removed from each other's presence. There's sight and sound restrictions that we'd have to adhere to. This is just taking those same individuals from the transaction that they completed to a place that we can engage in further processing and separation of those individuals. We had this in a previous legislature. We got close, but again, we couldn't get this one through the finish line. Number 7 is an automatic commitment for individuals convicted of first-degree murder. We worked with the legislature in a previous session. We got what we believe constituted great relief to us. If an individual was convicted of first-degree murder, the only sentence that can be imposed is life without the possibility of parole. So there's no doubt that individual is going to go to the MDOC. We had worked it out where we could do an immediate transport provided the individual was brought back and sentenced within 45 days, and we'd be responsible for bringing that person back. And we thought that the trade-off on that was a great thing to, again, reduce risk and liability inside the county jails and to bring that person where they could be better attended to. The unfortunate thing is the Michigan Department of Corrections has not been able to complete the necessary processing from their end within this 45-day period, which means we've had an undue prolonged period of detention for those individuals that shouldn't remain in sheriff custody. We're seeking some additional relief in this by extending that time frame out to 90 days. And then the very last one I'm going to speak about generically, there are different bills that the Michigan Commission on Law Enforcement Standards has advocated for. These would bring the MCOL's rules up to the current state of affairs to apply to other laws that are out there. And then most importantly, this would tighten up those loopholes that have allowed a bad officer that's left agency A to go to agency B without those bad things being known to that agency. This would provide the employers, the current employer and the prospective employer with some additional means of discovering those things, so that we want to make sure that everyone's engaging in law enforcement is appropriately vetted and that they're going to be the best person that we can possibly hire to police our communities. We think that's in the public's best interest, and this is something that we'll strongly back when it comes before the legislature this year. And ladies and gentlemen, I thank you for your time. I tried not to monopolize too much of it. I'm a chatty Cathy, but I hope I went through it fairly quick. Thank you, and I'll turn it over to Matt.
Thank you, Dan. In closing, as Executive Director of the Michigan Sheriff's Association, I am proud to represent an organization with a long-standing commitment to public safety and community service. Our mission is rooted in upholding the constitutional role of the sheriff, ensuring our offices are equipped to meet today's demands, and building partnerships that make a difference across Michigan. With that, if there's any questions, our presentation is complete.
Okay. Excellent presentation. Yep, looks like we have a couple of representatives have questions. Representative Breen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, gentlemen, for being here. I appreciate your work. I just want to say, first of all, you'll be happy to know that your first priority, that was a bill that died in concurrence last term, and we hope to get that all the way across the finish line, too. I have 2 specific questions. One, you talked about a grant that you're getting from DHHS, and I want to know if that's something that, to your best knowledge, is that something that might be affected by the pending cuts that are coming to DHHS? And then I also would like to know, and thank you again for your assistance in crafting the firearm legislation last term. I think we did a great job working together, and I want to know if you have any feedback on how the firearm legislation is working, particularly red flag.
Well, thank you, Rep. Breen, for your efforts last session on the retirement bill and that priority. Your first question was our grant from DHHS. I don't believe so, that it would be affected with potential cuts. However, in the last 6 years or so, we've struggled with that grant because a lot of the victims that we serve are not victims of crime. They are victims and survivors of incidents. Some of them are survivors of crime. But the strings are tied to that grant. It almost takes us more money to manage that $85,000 than it does to put that to good use into our local units. So we would love to look at another option for funding for that program as well. But MSA is such a strong believer of that program. With or without the grant, we will continue to provide those needed training and conferences for those dedicated volunteers across the state of Michigan. And as to your question on the RPOs and gun safety laws, we did work tirelessly through that last session to get those bills to a position where at the end of the day we did support them. And we have seen, specifically with the ERPOs, that about 81.5% of the time that a ERPO has been issued, it has been requested by law enforcement. So law enforcement is using that as a tool. That was one of the conversations we had during the legislative process, just like in Florida, where it's used as much as any other state, and it's because law enforcement has to be involved with that process. So we're seeing that here, that law enforcement is using it, and we haven't seen any abuse of that to date. I believe there's 357 active VRPOs in the state of Michigan, and of those, as mentioned, 291 were petitioned by law enforcement.
Okay,
Which
Representative.
equates to less than one a day since its inception, February 2024. Thank you.
Okay, Representative Wozniak.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For Sheriff Goodenough, you had mentioned, by the way, your presentation was wonderful. Every point I wrote down I wanted to ask you questions about, you answered. So, but you mentioned you had school relation officers. And something we haven't talked about today, we didn't hit on it, was active shooter training for the students, or providing more protective, not services, but products that can protect the school. Can you just elaborate a little bit? I don't want you to give away any secrets.
No. That's a great question, Rep. Sorry, that's a great question. To start out to your first question, yes, we call them relationship officers. In the active shooter, we hold every year at the beginning of the school, we bring all our school officials. We have 9 districts in Monroe County. We go to a different school district every year, and we host a full 8-hour training of active shooter to the staff, and then we have a brief overview. Obviously, we don't share a lot of the information with students because we don't want them to evaluate where our strong points are, where our weak points are, but we do educate them on that. So hopefully that answers your question.
Thank you. Sounds like a great program you're doing. I'm sure all the other districts are doing that too, but you specifically mentioned it, so thank you.
Thank you.
Representative Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for an outstanding presentation that was very efficient with the limited time you have. Mental health. We know you're bogged down with what you never signed up to do, and you're not prepared, or you don't have the facilities and the manpower to deal with it. Do you want state hospitals back? Whether you do or you don't, do you have other suggestions as well, or instead? Thanks.
I don't know necessarily the terminology, but we need state beds back. There's a direct correlation to Michigan's jail population to the closing of mental health beds in the state of Michigan. Our jail population rose at the same level that beds were eliminated in mental health. something needs to be done to get those individuals the help and the treatment and the resources they need to better themselves. And the county jail is not that location.
You know, even if it, and I hate to use the term as simple as, but, you know, we've seen these transition centers where law enforcement has the opportunity to turn left or turn right with an individual. You know, in Muskegon County, I talked about some of the CIT training a little bit. I just touched on that, but that's not just the officers at the sheriff's office. Of the 11 agencies that work out of Muskegon County, all of them are trained in CIT. We have a great opportunity. We have mental health workers that work right in line with patrol. They're embedded in law enforcement agencies. And we have an opportunity when we contact an individual that maybe something's not right, all right? And that person, we're not sure if they missed an appointment or something's going on. Right from that officer's MCT within his police vehicle, he notifies Health West, our mental health provider, of the individual's name or something like that, and then they'll do a follow-up visit with that person to make sure everything's, you know, fine with them. But in 2017, the Muskegon County Board of Commissioners signed on to the Stepping Up initiative, which afforded us the opportunity to start receiving training, and which we do through our mental health initiatives, for the intercepts, to be able to identify individuals as we move along and as they go through the system. And so law enforcement now has a voice to help place these people, or making sure that they're getting the treatment that they need. But having the ability, you know, with that specialized training, and having the ability to take the person to the facility that they should be at and they need to be at to get them that help would be so beneficial, yes.
Rep. Johnson, if I could just highlight of what Sheriff Poulin said, we sometimes have inmates that remain in our correctional institution for 180 days. The penalty for their crime is 90 to 100. They're there longer than if they were to be sentenced for the crime for which they committed. And in undergrad school, I wrote a paper on the effects of closing of the mental health institutions. And Bridge Magazine published that. You're welcome to look at that, and I have some other papers. And that's why I was grateful to be put on the Mental Health Diversion Council, and hopefully bring some of these ideas. Like Sheriff Poulin, we have a very robust mental health program for both of our divisions that we see significant return on investment.
Okay, not seeing any further questions. Again, I want to say what a great job you guys did, all of you. Especially you guys talked about the programs that you have going on. Many people don't realize that those aren't required. Those are up and above, and it really shows a commitment to your communities, and I want to thank you for those. So, great presentation.
Just, Chair, just briefly, I want to thank each and every one of you for the support of the trust fund bills that were passed out of the House 104 to 4 yesterday, so we appreciate that support. That goes a long way in spending state dollars responsibly and putting the money where it needs to go to lower our violent crime. So Rep. Harris, and thank you, Rep. Farhat, for sponsoring those bills and moving them on to the Senate, so we'll work over there.
Right on, yeah. We definitely think they're going to make a difference, making the communities safer. So thanks again, and as a former sheriff, you know, I appreciate all the resources that you guys do have for the sheriff, so keep up the good work. Okay, thanks. Okay, Representative Wozniak moves to excuse our absent members. And seeing no further business before the committee, we'll stand adjourned.